Most people think wealth is built through massive wins, a lottery ticket, a viral business, a stock that moons overnight. They're wrong. And that fundamental misunderstanding is why they'll stay broke while a small minority compounds their way to generational wealth using a principle so simple it sounds boring. But here's what makes it dangerous. The mathematics behind this principle are so powerful that if you improve just 1% daily, you don't end up 1% better. You don't even end up 10% better. You end up 37 times better in a single year. 37 times. That's not a typo. That's exponential compounding. And it's the secret the wealthy have been using for centuries, while everyone else chases get-rich-quick schemes that statistically fail 99% of the time. I'm William Vanderbilt, and what I'm about to share with you isn't motivational fluff. This is the actual mathematics, the real psychology, and the proven systems that billionaires use to create wealth that seems impossible from the outside. Because here's the truth that nobody wants to hear. Small, boring, consistent decisions compound into outcomes so extraordinary that people will assume you got lucky. They'll never see the 1,000 tiny choices you made when nobody was watching. They'll never understand that you were playing a completely different game. So here's my promise to you. By the end of this deep dive, you're going to understand exactly why Jeff Bezos limits himself to 3 decisions a day. You're going to learn why Mark Zuckerberg rejected $1 billion when his entire team told him to take it. You're going to see the exact framework Oprah Winfrey uses every single morning to compound her energy, her focus, and her influence. And most importantly, you're going to walk away with the precise system to start your own compounding effect across 5 critical domains that will transform your financial reality over the next 12 months. But before we go any further, I need you to do something. If you're serious about this, if you actually want to understand how wealth really works, and you're tired of surface-level advice, hit that subscribe button right now. Because here's what most people don't understand. Learning about wealth is itself a compounding behavior. Each video you watch, each principle you internalize, each strategy you implement, they stack, they multiply. They create a knowledge advantage that becomes a financial advantage. The people who subscribe aren't just getting notifications. They're committing to the compound effect of consistent learning. And that commitment, that tiny decision right now, is exactly the kind of move that separates people who talk about getting rich from people who actually do it. So subscribe, hit the notification bell, and let's get into the mathematics that changes everything. The formula is devastatingly simple. 1.01 to the power of 365 equals 37.78. If you improve by 1% every single day for a year, you become nearly 40 times better than when you started. Not 40% better, 40 times better. This is the mathematical foundation of how small moves create massive wealth. But here's where it gets interesting, and this is where most people completely miss the point. The growth isn't linear. It's not like you get a little better each day, and at the end of the year you look back and see steady progress. No. The compound effect is cruel in the beginning and explosive at the end. In the first month of improving 1% daily, you're only 1.35 times better. That's a 35% improvement after 30 straight days of work. Most people look at that and think it's not worth it. They expected more, they wanted dramatic transformation. So they quit. By month 6, if you've stayed consistent, you're almost 6 times better. That's when things start to feel real. But by month 12, you're 37 times better. The majority of your results happen in the final quarter. This is why the wealthy think in years and decades, while everyone else thinks in days and weeks. Let me give you the real-world context of what this means. If you save just $5 a day and invest it at an 8% annual return, which is below the historical stock market average, you'll have $271,697 in 30 years. $5 a day. That's less than a coffee. But here's the part that breaks people's brains. In the first year, you only have $1,965. After 5 years, you have $11,808. After 10 years, $29,680. It looks slow, it looks boring. But by year 20, you have $93,470. And in the final 10 years, you gain $178,000. More than half your wealth is created in the last third of the timeline. This is the invisible phase of compounding, and it's why most people never experience it. They quit before the curve goes vertical. Now let me tell you about someone who understood this principle better than almost anyone in modern history, and how it made him one of the most powerful decision-makers on the planet. In the late 1990s, Jeff Bezos was running a company that was losing money every single quarter. Amazon was hemorrhaging cash. His board was nervous, investors were skeptical. Wall Street analysts openly mocked the business model, but Bezos had a framework that nobody else seemed to understand. He wasn't optimizing for this quarter's earnings. He wasn't trying to impress anyone with short-term wins. He was engineering a compounding machine, and his method was counterintuitive. He limited himself to 3 high-quality decisions per day. 3 decisions, that's it. While other executives were making dozens or hundreds of decisions daily, running from meeting to meeting, putting out fires, Bezos structured his entire operation around the principle that decision quality compounds far more powerfully than decision quantity. He realized that if he made 3 truly excellent decisions every day, each one carefully considered when his mind was sharp and his energy was high, those decisions would compound into an unstoppable competitive advantage. And he was right. One of those 3 daily decisions was to obsess over customer experience, even when it was expensive. Lower prices when others were raising them. Build faster shipping when it hurt margins. Create hassle-free returns when it seemed financially insane. Each decision lost money in isolation, but compounded together, they created customer loyalty so powerful that Amazon could survive anything. Another decision, build the infrastructure internally rather than outsource it. This seemed wasteful, expensive, inefficient, but that internal infrastructure eventually became Amazon Web Services, which now generates more profit than the entire retail operation. Here's what Bezos understood that his critics didn't. Compound decisions create compound returns, but only if you give them time. Amazon operated at a loss or razor-thin margins for years. Most CEOs would have been fired. But Bezos had structured his ownership and his board in a way that gave him the runway to let compounding work. And when it did, it was explosive. His 3 decisions per day framework, applied consistently for 20 years, compounded into a $2 trillion company. The decision quality compounded, the customer trust compounded, the infrastructure advantage compounded. The data insights compounded, each element reinforcing the others in a flywheel that became impossible for competitors to replicate. This is the first critical lesson of the compound effect. Focus on decision quality over decision quantity. The wealthy don't try to do everything. They identify the few leverage points that compound, and they execute on those relentlessly. Bezos didn't wake up trying to make 100 decisions. He woke up trying to make 3 great ones, and 3 great decisions per day for 20 years beats 1,000 mediocre decisions every time. But here's where most people get compounding wrong. They think it's just about money. They think if they save and invest, that's enough. That's amateur hour. The truly wealthy understand that compounding works across multiple dimensions simultaneously. And when you compound in parallel across different domains, the multiplicative effect is exponential. Money compounds. Fine. But habits compound. Relationships compound. Knowledge compounds. Reputation compounds. Health compounds. And when you're compounding in 5 or 6 dimensions at once, you're not just getting 37 times better in one area. You're creating a compounding cascade where improvement in one domain accelerates improvement in all the others. Let me show you how this plays out in the real world with someone who rejected $1 billion because he understood compounding better than his entire management team. In 2006, Mark Zuckerberg was 22 years old. Facebook had been around for 2 years. Yahoo offered him $1 billion to acquire the company. $1 billion. For a 22-year-old. Most people would have taken that offer before the ink dried. His management team told him to take it. His investors told him to take it. He said no. And within a year, most of his management team quit because they thought he was insane. But Zuckerberg saw something they didn't. He understood that Facebook wasn't just a product. It was a compounding network effect. Every new user made the platform more valuable for existing users. Every photo shared, every connection made, every piece of content posted. It all compounded into a stickiness that couldn't be replicated. If he sold for $1 billion, that compounding would belong to Yahoo. If he held, the compounding would belong to him. So he held. In 2012, 6 years after rejecting that $1 billion offer, Facebook went public at a valuation of $104 billion. 104 times what Yahoo had offered. And if you had bought $1,000 of Facebook stock at that IPO, by 2025, you'd have $18,531, an 18.5 times return in 13 years. But here's the deeper lesson. Zuckerberg wasn't just betting on Facebook's growth. He was compounding his own decision-making confidence. Every time he resisted short-term liquidity for long-term compounding, he reinforced a mental model that most entrepreneurs never develop. The ability to say no to money today because you believe in exponential returns tomorrow. That's a compounding mindset, and once you develop it in one decision, it becomes easier in the next. Zuckerberg went on to make more billion-dollar bets, acquiring Instagram for $1 billion when critics said it was overpriced, acquiring WhatsApp for $19 billion when everyone said he was crazy. Each time, he was compounding his conviction. Each time he was proved right, not because he was lucky, because he understood compounding while his critics were thinking linearly. This is the second critical lesson. The compound effect requires saying no to immediate gratification. The $1 billion offer was immediate gratification. The 18 times return required patience. Most people can't delay gratification for 18 years. They can't even delay it for 18 days. That's why they stay broke. The wealthy train themselves to see short-term wins as distractions from long-term compounding. They develop the psychological muscle to walk past the easy money because they're targeting the exponential money. Now, if you're starting to see how this applies to your own life, if you're realizing that the decisions you're making today are either compounding toward wealth or compounding toward mediocrity, I need you to do something. Drop a comment right now telling me which area of your life you're going to start compounding in. Is it your savings, your skills, your network, your health? Because here's the thing, just by articulating it, just by putting it in writing, you're activating a psychological commitment device. You're making it real. And the people who comment, who engage, who take that tiny action, they're statistically far more likely to follow through than people who just passively consume. So comment below, tell me your compound domain. I read every single one. And your comment might be exactly what someone else needs to see to take action themselves. Let's talk about how habits compound, because this is where the mathematics get truly wild. You see, about 40% of everything you do every day is habitual. It's not conscious decision-making. It's automated behavior, your morning routine, how you respond to stress. Whether you check your phone first thing or meditate, whether you read before bed or scroll social media, these habits are running in the background, compounding outcomes without you even realizing it. And here's the kicker. If 40% of your day is habitual, then the person with better habits has a 40% advantage every single day without even trying. That advantage compounds. Over a year, over a decade, it becomes an insurmountable lead. Elon Musk structures his entire day in 5-minute blocks. Not because he's trying to work harder. Plenty of people work long hours and stay broke. He does it because 5-minute blocks create compounding iteration cycles. In the time a normal executive spends in 1 hour-long meeting, Musk has cycled through 12 different problems, 12 decisions, 12 learning moments. He's compounding knowledge, compounding problem-solving reps, compounding decision-making speed. Over a decade, this compounds into the ability to run 6 companies simultaneously. Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, Boring Company, XXAI. People think he's superhuman. He's not. He's just compounding time management habits that most people never develop. Bill Gates blocks 90-minute reading sessions every morning and every evening. He reads roughly 50 books per year, taking detailed notes in the margins, synthesizing insights across disciplines. This habit, repeated for 40 years, has compounded into something extraordinary. Gates can speak authoritatively on vaccine distribution, malaria eradication, climate change, nuclear energy, agricultural innovation, fields that have nothing to do with software. His credibility in these domains has influenced billions of dollars in funding and shaped policy worldwide. That's the compound effect of a reading habit. It didn't happen in a year. It happened across decades. But now, his knowledge advantage is so vast that he can walk into any room and immediately become one of the most informed people in that room on almost any topic. Oprah Winfrey wakes up naturally at 6 a.m. every single day. She doesn't use an alarm. She's trained her circadian rhythm through consistency. She takes her dogs for a walk, meditates for 20 minutes, exercises, and maintains specific nutritional protocols. All of this happens before 9 a.m. By the time most people are stumbling out of bed checking their phones, Oprah has already optimized her mind, body, and energy for peak performance. This daily ritual, compounded over 30 years, has created a baseline of mental clarity and physical vitality that most people never experience. And that baseline compounds into better decisions, more creativity, higher energy, and ultimately, a media empire worth billions. These aren't special people. They're people who understand that habits compound silently in the background while you sleep. The wealthy don't rely on motivation. Motivation is a feeling. Feelings are unreliable. They build systems. They build habits so small that it's harder to fail than to succeed. And once a habit becomes automatic, it costs zero willpower to maintain, but continues compounding returns forever. Here's how you actually implement this. Most people try to build habits by going big. They want to read an hour a day when they haven't read 10 minutes a day consistently. They want to save 20% of their income when they haven't saved 5%. They want to network every day when they haven't reached out to one person per week. This is why they fail. The compound effect doesn't reward heroic effort. It rewards consistency. You need to make the habit so small that you can't rationalize skipping it. Start with 1% improvements across 5 domains. Money, automate one savings deposit, just one. Before you pay any bills, before you buy anything, automate $5, $10, whatever you can afford, into a separate account. Make it invisible, make it automatic, that's compounding. Skills, read 10 pages a day, not a book a week, not 30 minutes a day, 10 pages. That's 15 minutes maximum. If you read 10 pages every single day, you'll finish roughly 25 books per year. That's more than 95% of people. That knowledge compounds. Relationships. Send one thoughtful message per day. 1. To someone in your network. Not a generic, "Hey, how are you" message. Something specific. Congratulate them on a win. Share an article they'd find useful. Make an introduction. These tiny touches compound into a network that brings opportunities to you. Health, 1 workout, 1 healthy meal choice, 1 extra hour of sleep per week. Just 1, not a complete transformation. 1 improvement. That improvement compounds into energy, which compounds into productivity, which compounds into income. Mindset. Write down 3 wins from your day every night. 3 things you did well. This compounds into a mental model of abundance rather than scarcity. It rewires your brain to see opportunities instead of obstacles. 5 domains. 1% daily improvement in each. That's it. And here's the secret that makes this actually work. Don't track daily. Track weekly. Daily tracking creates pressure. You miss one day and you feel like a failure. You break the streak and you quit entirely. Weekly tracking reveals patterns without the emotional volatility. At the end of the week, you look back and see that you hit your 1% improvement 4 days out of 7 in each domain. That's a 57% consistency rate. Not perfect, but compounding. Next week, you hit 5 out of 7. 71%. Still not perfect, but the trend is compounding upward. By week 12, you're at 6 out of 7 days consistently. 86%. And at that point, the behavior is becoming automatic. You're not trying anymore. You're just doing. Research shows it takes 66 days of consistency to rewire neural pathways and turn a behavior into a habit. 66 days. That's 9 weeks. If you can stay consistent for 9 weeks, your brain literally changes. The behavior becomes automatic. And once it's automatic, it compounds forever without effort. This is why the wealthy focus on the first 90 days of any new system. They know that if they can survive the boring middle, where nothing seems to be happening, the back end is explosive. Let me tell you about the invisible phase, because this is where 90% of people quit and never experience compounding at all. You start saving $5 a day. After 1 month, you have $150. That's meaningless. You can't do anything with $150. After 6 months, you have $900. Still not life-changing. After 1 year, you have $1,825. You look at that number and think, this isn't working. I've been disciplined for a full year, and all I have is less than $2,000. This is the valley of death. This is where doubt, boredom, and distraction peak. Most people quit right here. They don't see results that feel meaningful, so they assume the system is broken. They go back to spending. They go back to hoping for a windfall. They go back to playing the lottery, and they never experience compounding. But if you push through, if you stay consistent into year 2, you now have $4,000. Year 3, $6,500. Year 5, $11,800. By year 10, you have almost $30,000. And somewhere between year 10 and year 15, something magical happens. The compounding curve goes vertical. Your money starts making more money than you're contributing. Your investments are growing faster than your deposits. You're no longer pushing the boulder uphill. The boulder is rolling on its own, picking up speed, and you're just steering. By year 20, you have $93,000. By year 30, $271,000. More than half your wealth was created in the final 10 years. But you only get to the final 10 years if you survive the first 10 years when nothing seems to be happening. This is the psychological warfare of the compound effect. It punishes you in the beginning with invisible progress. It rewards you at the end with exponential growth. The wealthy understand this. They expect the early years to feel like nothing is happening. They're not discouraged by it. They know the mathematics. They know the curve. They know that every boring, unremarkable day of consistency is loading the cannon for the explosive back end. So they show up. They don't check their account balance every week looking for validation. They don't need emotional reinforcement. They trust the process because they've seen it work before, or they've studied enough examples to believe in it. Let's talk about relationships, because this is the domain where compounding is most chaotic and most explosive. Money compounds predictably. Put in X, get out Y based on return rate and time. Relationships don't work that way. You can't predict when one connection will change your entire trajectory, but you can create conditions where those moments are far more likely, and those conditions are built through tiny, consistent actions that compound trust over years. Richard Branson built a $200 billion empire across 70 countries and over 40 industries. Airlines, music, mobile, space travel. How does one person successfully operate in that many domains? He doesn't. His network does. And he built that network through one tiny habit. He carries a notebook everywhere. On every Virgin Atlantic flight, he walks the aisles talking to passengers and crew, asking for feedback, taking notes. And then he actually implements suggestions. He follows up. He sends personal thank you notes. He makes changes based on what customers tell him. This tiny habit, taking notes, caring enough to act on feedback, compounded into loyalty so deep that Virgin survived multiple near bankruptcies. His customers became evangelists. His employees became partners. His network became his safety net. That's relationship compounding. Oprah Winfrey writes 5 things she's grateful for every single night. Has done this for decades. This seems like a soft, motivational practice. It's not. It's strategic relationship engineering. By compounding a gratitude practice, she rewires her brain to see abundance everywhere. When you see abundance, you become more generous. You celebrate other people's wins. You make introductions without expecting anything in return. You give referrals freely. And when you do that consistently over decades, people reciprocate. They bring you opportunities. They fight for you. They protect your reputation. They refer you to their networks. One introduction can change everything. A reputation for making valuable introductions changes your entire ecosystem. Here's the system. Every week, reach out to one person in your network with something valuable. Not a favor ask, not a just checking in message. Something genuinely useful. An article they'd find helpful. A connection they should meet. Congratulations on a win you saw. Commentary on something they posted. Just one message. 7 minutes of your time. That's 52 meaningful touches per year. Over 5 years, that's 260 touchpoints across your network. Each one compounds trust, each one deepens the relationship, and at some point, often when you least expect it, one of those relationships opens a door you didn't even know existed. A business partnership, an investment opportunity, a career pivot, a life-changing introduction. You can't predict which relationship will deliver which outcome, but you can guarantee that relationships built on consistent value-adding compound into opportunities that transactional relationships never produce. The mistake most people make is they network when they need something. They reach out when they want a job or a favor or an introduction. That's not networking. That's begging. And it doesn't compound because there's no trust foundation. The wealthy network, when they don't need anything, they add value for years before they ever ask for value in return. And when they do ask, the answer is almost always yes, because they've built a compound trust account that has far more deposits than withdrawals. Now let's talk about reputation, because this is the slowest compound domain and the most powerful. Reputation works inversely to its visibility. You build it when no one's watching. You cash it in when everyone is. And if you've been consistent long enough, your name carries weight before you even speak. Jeff Bezos made customer obsession his North Star decision-making principle for over 20 years. Every decision, every policy, every innovation filtered through one question. Will this make customers happy? That single mental model applied relentlessly across 2 decades, compounded into a reputation so powerful that customers trust Amazon by default. They don't comparison shop. They don't read reviews as carefully. They just buy. That's compound reputation. It's a moat competitors can't cross because they haven't put in the decades of consistency. Bill Gates' reputation for reading 50 books per year and taking meticulous notes has compounded into intellectual authority across disciplines. When Gates speaks about climate change, people listen. When he talks about pandemic preparedness, governments act. When he discusses agricultural innovation, funding flows. He didn't become the world's most influential philanthropist overnight. He spent 40 years compounding knowledge so deep and so broad that his opinion became more valuable than most experts in any single field. That's compound reputation converting into compound influence. Here's how you build it. Do the work when no one's watching. Publish insights when you have a small audience. Help people who can't help you back. Be consistent in your principles, even when it costs you short-term gains. Every tiny action compounds into your reputation, and reputation is the ultimate long-term asset because it opens doors before you knock, creates opportunities before you ask, and generates trust before you've earned it through any single transaction. The framework for implementing your own compound effect system comes down to 5 steps. First, identify your 1% improvement domains. Don't try to improve 10% in one area. That's a recipe for burnout and failure. Choose 5 domains: money, skills, relationships, health, mindset. Commit to 1% daily improvement in each. 1 savings deposit, 10 pages read, 1 message sent, 1 healthy choice, 3 gratitude items. That's it, not 10 things. 5, not 10% improvement, 1%. The goal is consistency, not heroism. Second, track weekly, not daily. Daily tracking creates pressure and emotional volatility. Weekly tracking reveals patterns without the drama. Use apps like Streaks or Habit Now or Way of Life. Mark your completions each day but review progress weekly. Did you hit your 1% improvement 4 out of 7 days? That's 57% consistency. Good enough to compound. Next week, go for 5 out of 7, 71%. You're not aiming for perfection, you're aiming for a trend, and trends compound. Third, implement habit stacking. Don't create new routines from scratch. Stack new habits onto existing anchors using James Clear's formula. After I do existing habit, I will do new habit. After I pour my morning coffee, I will read 1 article about my industry. After I brush my teeth at night, I will write 3 wins from my day. After my lunch break, I will call 1 person in my network. After I settle at my desk, I will review 1 financial metric. Habit stacking removes decision friction. Your brain is already in action mode after the anchor habit. The new behavior feels like a natural extension rather than a brand new effort. Fourth, Reinvest your wins. This is the step most people miss, and it's the difference between good results and extraordinary results. When you save money, don't spend the interest. Reinvest it. When you develop a skill, don't coast. Use it to learn an adjacent skill. When you strengthen a relationship, don't assume it's permanent. Deepen it with new value. Bezos didn't distribute Amazon's early profits to shareholders. He reinvested them into infrastructure and expansion. That reinvestment compounded into AWS, which now generates more profit than the retail business. Every win you reinvest creates a larger base for the next compound cycle. Every win you spend stops the compounding. Fifth, monthly reviews and quarterly recalibration. Review your 5 1% domains every month. Were you 80% or more consistent? If yes, maintain. If no, simplify or pivot to different domains. You might realize that health habits compound better for you than mindset habits. Fine. Adjust. Quarterly, assess which compound investments are delivering returns and which need more time or different approaches. The compound effect doesn't mean rigidity, it means consistent experimentation within a framework. The wealthy don't stick with strategies that aren't working, but they also don't quit before giving compounding enough time to work. Here's the brutal truth. Nobody wants to say out loud, 1% daily improvement in 5 domains for 10 years, accounting for the multiplicative effect across those domains, doesn't give you a 37 times return. It gives you a return in the tens of thousands of times range. The mathematics are exponential when you compound across multiple dimensions. A person who improves 100% in one area, then quits compounds nothing. They get a spike, then a plateau. A person who improves 1% daily across 5 domains for a decade compounds a return so large that it seems impossible from a single-year perspective. That's the difference between linear thinking and exponential thinking. Linear thinkers optimize for this quarter. Exponential thinkers optimize for the next decade. This is why the wealthy always talk about playing the long game. They're not smarter. They're not luckier. They understand compounding while everyone else is chasing shortcuts. They know that money, habits, relationships, and reputation all obey the same mathematical law. Small, consistent gains multiplied by time create outcomes that seem impossible from a short-term view. And they're willing to look stupid, boring, and unremarkable for years because they know what's coming on the back end of the curve. Let me give you one final example that ties all of this together. There are 2 investors. Investor A starts saving at age 25, puts away $200 per month for 10 years, then stops completely. Never adds another dollar. Just lets it compound at 8% annually. Investor B waits until age 35, then starts saving $200 per month and continues for 30 years straight until retirement at 65. Who ends up with more money? Most people guess Investor B because they contributed 3 times as long. Wrong. Investor A ends up with roughly $256,000. Investor B ends up with roughly $226,000. Investor A wins, despite contributing only $24,000 total, while Investor B contributed $72,000. Why? Because Investor A gave compounding an extra 10 years to work. Those 10 extra years in the market were worth more than $48,000 in additional contributions. That's the power of starting now. Not next month, not next year. Not when you feel ready, now. Because every day you delay is a day you lose on the back end of the exponential curve. The wealthy don't wait for perfect conditions. They start with imperfect action and let compounding smooth out the imperfections over time. So here's what happens next. You have 2 options. Option 1, you close this video, think, that was interesting, and go back to your normal life. You keep making the same decisions you've been making. You keep getting the same results you've been getting. You stay on the linear path, while a small group of people who took this seriously start compounding past you. Option 2, you take action immediately. You pick your 5 domains. You define your 1% improvement in each. You set up your tracking system. You implement your first habit stack. You automate your first savings deposit. You send your first value-add message to someone in your network. You read your first 10 pages. You write your first 3 wins. You take the tiny action that seems meaningless in isolation, but compounds into everything over time. The wealth gap isn't about income, it's not about intelligence, it's not about luck or connections or family money. It's about who understands compounding and who doesn't. The people who get it start small, stay consistent, and let time do the heavy lifting. The people who don't get it keep chasing big wins, quit when results don't come fast enough, and wonder why wealth always seems to belong to someone else. You now understand the mathematics, you now understand the psychology, you now understand the systems. The only question left is whether you'll actually implement. If this hit you differently than the usual motivational content, if you're realizing that everything you thought about wealth was wrong and you're ready to play the long game, do me a favor. Share this video with one person who needs to hear it. Just one. Because here's the thing. Sharing valuable content is itself a compound behavior. You become known as someone who curates insight. People start coming to you for recommendations. Your reputation as a source of value compounds. And one share, multiplied across weeks and months and years, compounds into influence. So share it. Not because I need the views, because you need the practice of adding value to your network. That's compound thinking. I'm William Vanderbilt. I'll see you in the next one, where we're going deeper into the psychology of the ultra-wealthy and the exact decision-making frameworks they use to stay ahead. Don't miss it. Subscribe now, because the compound effect of watching these videos consistently is that you start thinking like the wealthy long before you have their money. And once you think like them, the money is just a matter of time.